I stood in the empty house where I'd raised my children, where every corner held a memory, and realized something that made my hands shake. Not one of them had called me in 3 months. Not on my birthday, not on Thanksgiving, not even a text message. The silence was deafening, but what hurt most was knowing exactly why they'd disappeared. I'd stopped paying their bills. My name is Barbara, and I'm 68 years old. I'm recording this story from a place my children will never find me. And honestly, that's exactly how I want it. But before I tell you what I did with the house they were all fighting over, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments because I want to know I'm not alone in this. I want to know there are other women out there who felt what I'm about to share with you. This story starts 5 years ago when my husband, Richard, died. We'd been married for 43 years. He was a good man, a provider, and he left me comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. A paid-off house worth about $800,000, his life insurance, and his pension. Between that and my own Social Security, I had enough to live well for the rest of my life. I have 3 children. Daniel is 45, my oldest. Then there's Jennifer, 42, and my youngest, Michael, just turned 39. I also have 7 grandchildren scattered between them. For years, I thought I'd done everything right as a mother. I'd sacrificed, supported, cheered them on through every phase of life. Richard and I put all 3 through college. We helped with down payments on their first homes. We were there for every crisis, every celebration, every milestone. But after Richard died, something shifted. At first, I thought they were just being helpful. Daniel suggested I downsize, said the house was too much for me to handle alone. Jennifer started managing my finances, said I shouldn't worry my pretty little head about all those complicated numbers. Michael moved his family closer, said he wanted to keep an eye on me. I was grieving, lonely, and grateful for their attention. I didn't see the trap closing around me until it was almost too late. It started small. Daniel's business hit a rough patch. Could I help with his mortgage for just a few months? Jennifer's daughter needed braces, and with 3 kids, money was tight. Could I cover it? Michael's car broke down and he needed reliable transportation for work. Just a loan, Mom. We'll pay you back. I said yes every time. What mother wouldn't? These were my children, my babies, and they needed me. Richard would have helped them too, I was sure of it. So I wrote the checks. I covered the bills. I became their safety net, their backup plan, their endless source of emergency funds. Except the emergencies never stopped, and the paybacks never came. And slowly, so slowly I barely noticed it happening, I stopped being their mother and became something else, entirely. I became a bank, an ATM machine that happened to share their DNA. The requests became constant. Jennifer needed help with her kids' private school tuition. Daniel's business needed an infusion of cash to stay afloat. Michael wanted to renovate his basement. Then there were the birthdays, the holidays, the unexpected expenses that somehow always landed at my door. I calculated it once, late at night when I couldn't sleep. Over 4 years, I'd given them close to $300,000. $300,000 of the money Richard and I had worked our entire lives to save. But here's what really got me. They never asked anymore. They demanded. They expected. Jennifer would call and tell me she'd already enrolled her kids in summer camp and needed $4,500 by Friday. Daniel would text me his mortgage payment amount with a reminder that it was due on the 1st. Michael stopped pretending these were loans at all. I started having nightmares about running out of money. I was dipping into principal now, not just living off interest and Social Security. My financial advisor, a kind man named Thomas who'd worked with Richard for years, sat me down and showed me the projections. At this rate, I'd be broke in 6 years, broke at 74 years old with nothing left and nowhere to go. Barbara, Thomas said gently, you need to stop. Your children are adults. They need to solve their own financial problems. I knew he was right. God, I knew he was right. But saying no to your children, even when they're middle-aged, even when they're bleeding you dry, is one of the hardest things a mother can do. I loved them. I wanted them to be happy, to be secure, to have good lives. Wasn't that what mothers were supposed to do? It took me 3 months to work up the courage. 3 months of sleepless nights, of anxiety attacks, of practicing what I'd say in the mirror. Finally, I called a family meeting. I made dinner, set the table nicely, and waited for them to arrive. Only Daniel showed up on time. Jennifer was 40 minutes late, and Michael texted that he couldn't make it, but whatever I needed to say, I could just tell him over the phone. That should have been my first clue about how much I actually mattered to them. I'd prepared a whole speech. I was going to explain about the finances, about the projections, about how I needed to protect my future. I was going to be kind but firm, loving but clear. I'd even written down notes on index cards that I kept in my cardigan pocket. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was much simpler. I can't keep giving you money. I'm sorry, but I just can't anymore. The silence that followed was like a physical force. Daniel put down his fork slowly. Jennifer's face went completely blank. On speakerphone, I could hear Michael's sharp intake of breath. "What do you mean, you can't?" Jennifer asked, and her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Cold, hard, like I was a stranger who'd just insulted her. "I mean exactly that," I said, my voice shaking despite my attempt to sound firm. "I've been going through my savings too quickly. If I keep this up, I won't have anything left for my own future, for my own care, if I need it." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Mom, you have plenty of money. Dad left you very comfortable. You live alone in a house worth almost $1 million. You're being dramatic." "I'm being realistic," I countered, pulling out the papers Thomas had given me. "Look at these projections. Look at how much I've given you all over the past 4 years. It's not sustainable." Jennifer snatched the papers from my hand, her perfectly manicured nails catching the light. She barely glanced at them before tossing them back on the table. "These numbers are wrong. You're letting that advisor of yours manipulate you. He probably wants you to invest more with him or something." "Thomas has been nothing but honest with me," I said, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. "And these numbers aren't wrong. I have the bank statements to prove it." Michael's voice crackled through the phone speaker. "So what are you saying exactly, Mom? That you're just cutting us off? After everything we do for you?" That stopped me cold. "Everything you do for me? What exactly do you do for me?" "Are you serious right now?" Jennifer's voice rose. "I manage your finances. I make sure you're not getting scammed. I check on you constantly." "You manage my finances so you know exactly how much I have left to take," I said, and I watched her face flush red. "And you don't check on me. You check on my bank account." Daniel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is unbelievable. We're your children, Mom. Family helps family. That's what Dad would have wanted." "Don't you dare tell me what your father would have wanted," I said, and my voice came out stronger than I'd heard it in years. "Richard worked himself to exhaustion to provide for this family. He saved every penny so we could have security in our old age. He didn't do that so you could drain it all away and leave me with nothing." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jennifer gathered her purse, her movements sharp and angry. "I think we should go, Daniel. Clearly Mom has made up her mind to be selfish." Selfish. That word hit me like a slap. After everything I'd given them, after every sacrifice, every check written, every bill paid, I was selfish for wanting to protect my own future. "Fine," I said quietly. "Go. But understand this. I love you all more than life itself, but I'm done being your ATM. You're adults. You have jobs, homes, families. It's time you learn to live within your own means." They left without saying goodbye. Michael hung up without a word. I sat alone at the dinner table, looking at the food I'd prepared, the nice dishes I'd set out, and I cried until I had no tears left. That was 11 months ago. In those first few weeks after the meeting, I convinced myself things would blow over. They were angry, hurt, defensive, but they'd come around. We were family. You don't just throw away family over money. They'd cool down, reflect, and realize I was right. Maybe they'd even apologize. I was so naive. The calls stopped completely. Jennifer, who used to call me 3 times a week, went silent. Daniel, who'd stop by every Sunday for coffee, never showed up again. Michael blocked me on social media. When I tried calling them, the conversations were brief and cold. "Can't talk right now, Mom. Really busy with work. The kids have activities." Always an excuse, always a reason to get off the phone. I wasn't invited to Daniel's son's birthday party. That one broke me. Little Tommy was turning 7, and he was my first grandchild. I'd been at every single one of his birthdays since he was born. I sent a gift anyway, a remote control car he'd mentioned wanting. It was never acknowledged. No thank you card, no phone call, nothing. Thanksgiving came and went. I'd hosted Thanksgiving at my house for 43 years. It was our tradition. I'd start preparing days in advance, cooking Richard's favorite dishes, making sure everything was perfect. This year, I waited for someone to mention plans. No one did. I finally broke down and called Jennifer. "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "We're doing Thanksgiving at Daniel's this year. Didn't he tell you?" "No," I said, my throat tight. "He didn't." A pause. Then, "Well, I'm sure it just slipped his mind. You know how busy he is." "Am I invited?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. Things are still really tense. Maybe we should all have some space." Space. They wanted space from me because I'd stopped funding their lifestyles. I spent Thanksgiving alone for the first time in my life, eating a turkey sandwich and watching old movies, trying not to think about my children and grandchildren gathered together without me. Christmas was worse. I sent gifts for all 7 grandchildren, carefully chosen, lovingly wrapped. I included checks for my kids, too, smaller amounts than before, but still generous. I thought maybe this would open the door, show them I wasn't abandoning them completely. The gifts were never acknowledged, not one thank you, not one phone call. The checks were cashed within days, but the silence remained unbroken. I tried everything. I sent texts that went unanswered. I left voicemails that were ignored. I even drove to Jennifer's house once, and she answered the door but wouldn't let me in. "I'm really busy, Mom. Maybe call first next time." Then she closed the door in my face. I stood on her porch, where I'd stood 100 times before, where I'd been welcomed with hugs and coffee and grandchildren running to greet me, and I realized something terrible. They didn't love me. They loved my money. And now that the money was gone, so was their affection. I spent months in a fog of grief. This wasn't like losing Richard. When Richard died, I was surrounded by love, by support, by people who cared. This was different. This was being erased from my own family's life, deleted like I'd never mattered at all. The rejection was suffocating. My doctor put me on antidepressants. I stopped going to my book club because people would ask about my grandchildren, and I couldn't bear to explain why I never saw them anymore. I lost weight. I stopped sleeping well. The house felt like a mausoleum, filled with photos of a family that no longer wanted me. Then, one day in March, 8 months after I'd stopped the money, I overheard something that changed everything. I was at the grocery store and I saw Daniel's wife, Patricia, in the next aisle. I almost approached her, desperate for any connection to my family, but something made me hesitate. She was on her phone and her voice carried. I know, right? She actually thought we'd keep coming around after she cut us off. Like, "Hello? We have our own lives." A pause, then laughter. "Daniel says we should just wait her out. She's old. Eventually she'll die and we'll get the house anyway. Why waste time and energy pretending to care?" I stood frozen between shelves of canned goods, my shopping basket hanging from my arm, listening to my daughter-in-law laugh about waiting for my death. Not because she'd miss me, because she wanted my house. Something inside me cracked wide open, but it wasn't pain anymore. It was clarity. Ice-cold, crystal-clear clarity. They were waiting for me to die so they could inherit my house. They'd already decided among themselves how they'd divide it, probably arguing over who'd get what percentage. I was nothing more than an obstacle between them and $800,000 in real estate. My death was a financial event they were anticipating, maybe even hoping for. I walked out of that grocery store, leaving my cart abandoned in the aisle. I sat in my car in the parking lot, and for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Instead, I called Thomas, my financial advisor. "Thomas," I said when he answered, "I need to talk to you about selling my house." "Barbara, are you sure? That's a big decision. Maybe we should—" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I interrupted. "I want to sell it as quickly as possible, and I don't want my children to know until it's done." There was a long silence. Then, "Okay, let's set up a meeting. But Barbara, what are you planning to do?" What was I planning to do? I was planning to take back my life. I was planning to stop being a victim. I was planning to make sure that the people who'd treated me like a disposable ATM, who'd erased me from their lives, who were literally waiting for me to die, would inherit exactly what they deserved. Nothing. "I'm planning to disappear," I told Thomas, "and I need your help." If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button, because what I did next, they never saw coming. Thomas and I met the next day in his office. I'd brought every financial document I could find, every bank statement, every piece of paper related to my assets. I laid them all out on his conference table, like evidence in a trial. "Walk me through this," I said. "If I sell the house, what am I looking at?" Thomas pulled up his calculator and started working through the numbers. "The market's strong right now. Your house is in excellent condition in a desirable neighborhood. We could list it for $850,000, maybe $900 if we're aggressive. After real estate fees and capital gains taxes, you'd walk away with approximately $700,000. $700,000. Combined with what remained of my savings and Richard's life insurance, I'd have close to $1 million, more than enough to start completely over somewhere new." "How long would it take to sell?" I asked. "In this market? If we price it right, maybe 30 to 60 days. Could be faster." "I want to do it," I said firmly. "But Thomas, I need this to be quiet. I don't want my children finding out until after the sale closes." Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Barbara, I have to ask, are you absolutely certain about this? Once you sell, there's no going back, and your children will be furious." "My children haven't spoken to me in 8 months," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "They've made it perfectly clear that I only matter to them as a future inheritance. Well, they can inherit the memories. The house is mine, and I'm selling it." We listed the house 2 weeks later. Thomas connected me with a realtor he trusted, a sharp woman named Susan who understood the need for discretion. We priced it competitively at $875,000. Susan had professional photos taken, staged it beautifully, and within 3 days we had multiple offers. I accepted an offer of $910,000 from a young couple expecting their first child. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was selling the house where I'd raised my family to a couple just starting theirs. I hoped they'd fill it with more love than mine had shown me. The closing was set for 45 days out. During those 45 days, I planned my escape with military precision. I researched cities I'd always wanted to visit. I looked at apartments in places where the cost of living was lower, where my money would stretch further, where no one knew me or my history. I settled on Asheville, North Carolina. I'd visited once with Richard 30 years ago and fallen in love with the mountains, the art scene, the gentle pace of life. I found a beautiful 2-bedroom condo with a mountain view for $320,000. I could buy it outright, no mortgage, and still have more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I started packing slowly, carefully. I sorted through 43 years of memories, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. Every photo album, every piece of furniture, every dish and decoration held a story. Some made me smile. Most made me sad. The hardest part was the photos. Boxes and boxes of photographs spanning decades. Baby pictures, birthday parties, graduations, weddings. I'd been the family archivist, carefully documenting every milestone, every holiday, every precious moment. I stared at a photo of 5-year-old Jennifer on Christmas morning, her face glowing with joy as she opened presents. Where was that little girl now? What had happened to turn her into someone who could cut her mother out so completely? I packed one photo album to take with me, just one. The rest I left in boxes in the basement for whoever bought the house to deal with. Let them wonder about the family in the pictures. Let them imagine we were happy. 3 weeks before closing, Jennifer called me for the first time in 9 months. My heart leaped when I saw her name on my phone screen. Maybe she'd had a change of heart. Maybe she missed me. Maybe this nightmare was finally ending. "Mom," she said, her voice bright and false. "I was thinking about you today. How are you doing?" "I'm fine," I said cautiously. "How are you? How are the kids?" "Oh, everyone's great. Listen, Mom, I wanted to apologize. I think we all overreacted about the money thing. Family is what matters, right? Not money." I almost laughed at the irony. "That's very mature of you, Jennifer." "So I was thinking, why don't you come to dinner this Sunday? The whole family will be there. It's been too long." The whole family. After 9 months of silence, suddenly they wanted to see me. I knew exactly what this was about. Someone had driven by the house and seen the for sale sign, or maybe a neighbor had mentioned it. They'd found out, and now they were panicking. "That sounds lovely," I lied. "Sunday works for me." "Great, come around 5. And Mom, we really have missed you." "No, you haven't," I thought. "You've missed your inheritance." I didn't go to dinner on Sunday. Instead, I sent a group text to all 3 of my children at 4:45. "Sorry, not feeling well. Have to cancel. Hope you all have a nice evening together." Then I turned off my phone. I imagined them sitting around Daniel's dining room table, checking their watches, calling my number and getting voicemail. I imagined their frustration, their anger, their panic, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, not sadness. Just a strange, peaceful numbness. The closing happened on a Tuesday morning in mid-May. I signed my name on document after document, my hands steady. Susan presented me with a check for $862,000 after all fees and commissions. I stared at that check, representing everything Richard and I had built, and I felt the weight of my old life lifting off my shoulders. The buyers seemed like good people. The wife was heavily pregnant, glowing with excitement about their new home. The husband kept talking about the backyard, how perfect it would be for their daughter to play in. I wished them well and meant it. I walked out of that lawyer's office a free woman. That same afternoon, I pulled up to my new condo in Asheville. The moving company I'd hired had delivered my carefully selected belongings the day before. Not much, really. A bedroom set, my favorite chair, some books, my clothes, and that one photo album. Everything else I'd either sold, donated, or left behind. The condo was on the 3rd floor with a balcony overlooking the mountains. It was a fraction of the size of my old house, and it was perfect, clean, simple, unburdened by memories of betrayal. I stood on that balcony watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, and I breathed deeply for what felt like the first time in years. I'd left a note for my children at the old house, taped to the kitchen counter where I knew they'd eventually find it. I'd spent hours writing and rewriting it, trying to find words that would adequately express everything I felt. In the end, I kept it simple. Dear Daniel, Jennifer, and Michael, by the time you read this, I'll be gone, and the house will belong to someone else. I'm sure you're angry. I'm sure you feel betrayed. But I need you to understand something. For the last 5 years, you treated me like a bank account with a pulse. You took and took and took, and when I finally said no, you erased me from your lives. You stopped calling. You cut me out. You made it clear that I only mattered to you as a source of money and a future inheritance. I heard Patricia on the phone, talking about waiting for me to die so you could get this house. So I made the decision easy for you. You don't have to wait anymore. I'm gone, and so is your inheritance. I hope the $300,000 I gave you over the years was worth losing your mother. I hope when you're my age, your children treat you better than you treated me. The house is sold. The money is mine. And I'm starting over somewhere you'll never find me. Don't bother looking. Barbara. I'd made copies of that note and mailed them to each of my children's homes, timed to arrive the day after closing. I wanted them to get the news separately, in private, so they couldn't immediately join forces and strategize. I wanted each of them to sit with what they'd lost, what they'd thrown away, what their greed had cost them. My phone, which I'd turned back on after arriving in Asheville, started ringing that evening. First Jennifer, then Daniel, then Michael. Over and over and over, the calls came. I let every single one go to voicemail. I listened to the messages once, a parade of rage and disbelief and accusations. "How could you do this to us?" Jennifer shrieked. "This is theft, Mom. That house was our inheritance." Daniel's voice was cold with fury. "You're going to regret this. Family doesn't treat family this way." Michael sounded more hurt than angry, which almost made me laugh. Family doesn't treat family this way. The irony was lost on him completely. I deleted every message and blocked all 3 numbers. The first month in Asheville was strange. I kept waiting for the guilt to hit me, for the regret to settle in, for the maternal instinct to kick in and make me reach out to my children. It never came. Instead, what came was peace. Actual, genuine peace that I hadn't felt in years. I joined a book club at the local library. I started taking watercolor classes at the community center. I volunteered at a women's shelter twice a week, helping other women who were rebuilding their lives after difficult circumstances. I made friends, real friends who liked me for who I was, not what I could give them. One of those friends was Margaret, a 72-year-old retired teacher who lived 2 doors down from me. Over coffee one morning, about 2 months after my move, she asked me about my family. It was the first time anyone had asked directly. "I have 3 children," I said carefully. "We're not in contact." Margaret nodded, not pressing for details. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. "Did you have children?" I asked. 2 sons. One died in a car accident when he was 23. The other, well, let's just say we had different ideas about what family means. I haven't seen him in 15 years. "Do you regret it? The estrangement?" Margaret thought about this, stirring her coffee slowly. "I regret that he chose money over our relationship. I regret that he became someone I don't recognize. But do I regret protecting myself? No, not even a little bit. Barbara, there comes a point where you have to choose between preserving your dignity or preserving a relationship that's already dead. You can't do both." Her words settled something in me that I hadn't realized was still unsettled. About 3 months after I moved, I received a certified letter. It was from an attorney representing all 3 of my children. They were contesting the sale of the house, claiming I was mentally incompetent when I made the decision, that I'd been unduly influenced by my financial advisor, that as my children they had a right to inherit the family home. I read the letter twice, then called my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in elder law. She read through their claims and actually laughed. "Barbara, this is nonsense. You were evaluated by your doctor as mentally competent. You made a legal sale of property you owned outright. Your children have no legal standing whatsoever. This is a desperate attempt at intimidation." So what do I do? Nothing. I'll respond to their attorney, shut this down, and that'll be the end of it. Though I have to ask, do you want me to include a cease and desist? Make it clear they're not to contact you further? I thought about my children, probably huddled with their lawyer, convinced they could bully or manipulate me back into their lives, back into my role as their personal bank account. "Yes," I said firmly. "Make it very clear." Patricia drafted a response that left no room for interpretation. My children had no claim to my property, no right to my money, and no standing to question my choices. The legal letter marked the end of their attempts to reach me. After Patricia's response made it clear they had no case, the calls and emails stopped completely. It was like they'd finally accepted that I was serious, that I was really gone, that the money was truly beyond their reach. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. These were my children, people I'd carried in my body, raised, loved with every fiber of my being. There were moments when I'd see a grandmother with her grandchildren at the park and feel a sharp pain in my chest. There were holidays that felt empty despite my new friends. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I'd remember Patricia's voice at the grocery store, laughing about waiting for me to die. I'd remember the 9 months of complete silence, the erasure, the casual cruelty of being treated like I didn't exist unless I was writing checks. I'd remember how small I'd felt, how worthless, how used. And the pain would fade, replaced by something stronger, self-respect. 6 months into my new life, I did something I'd never done before. I went on a trip by myself, just because I wanted to. I spent 2 weeks in Santa Fe, wandering through art galleries, eating at wonderful restaurants, staying in a charming bed and breakfast. I bought myself a beautiful turquoise necklace that cost more than I'd ever spent on myself before. Every morning I woke up without anxiety, without dread, without the weight of other people's expectations crushing me. I was free. The money from the house sale, combined with my remaining savings, meant I could live comfortably for the rest of my life without worry. I could travel when I wanted. I could take classes. I could donate to causes I believed in. I could actually enjoy the life Richard and I had worked so hard to build instead of watching it drain away into the bottomless pit of my children's entitlement. I'm 70 now. My life in Asheville is quiet, peaceful, and entirely my own. I have friends who value me. I have hobbies that fulfill me. I have a home that's truly mine, free of ghosts and expectations and bitter memories. Sometimes people ask if I have children, and I say yes, but we're not close. I don't elaborate. Their story isn't mine to tell anymore. Would I have chosen this path if my children had treated me differently? Of course not. I would have given anything to have them in my life as real family, not as users. But they made their choice, and I made mine. They wanted an inheritance. Instead, they got a lesson they'll carry for the rest of their lives. You can't inherit from someone you've already lost, and they lost me long before I sold that house. They lost me the moment they decided I was worth more dead than alive. I disappeared, just like I said I would, and I've never been happier. This is my life now, and it belongs to nobody but me. That's all the justice I needed.